Hello, hello everyone, and welcome. Uh, my name is James Wayne. I am head of product specialists at Exclaimer. Let me start by saying today, I hope you have all been greatly enjoying a Microsoft 365 May, and that the uh, wealth of knowledge being shared during this event has really been impressing you. It's certainly been impressing me. So just before we get stuck in, just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as some of the messaging from 365 May is concerned. Uh, and that, of course, is in reference to uh, the traditional owners for whom we'd like to pay our respects. And as well, remind you that you can, of course, register as a participant and enter into prize draw. That is the QR code to do so. And of course, we'll make sure that that is brought up again later on in this presentation. As well, I'd just like to remind you all that there is a code of conduct for this event and ask you just to try and be constructive, be respectful, as well as being helpful and kind in today's session. So, as I mentioned, my name is James Wayne. I am the head of product specialist at Exclaimer, and today I will be discussing the topic of resolving the headache of email signature management. It's really my hope today that everyone can leave this session having learned something new about the humble email. And perhaps for some of you, you'll have been introduced to our solution as a viable method for realizing an otherwise unattainable level of email signature. Now, some of you may have already guessed by now that I am English. In fact, I'm currently based in the UK, where Exclaimer's main office is also based. So it's rather early here, and for that reason, and because it's really not my intent to overstay my welcome, or you with all that I know about email signatures, which is more, I promise you, than you would ever need to know about email. So I'll be trying to keep our time today to around 30 minutes. And this really should give us more than enough time to cover everything that I wish to discuss, and still leave us some time at the end to visit some of your questions. And I would ask that you save questions as best you can till the end if you do not mind, because I'll be sticking around afterwards to ensure that all of those queries are indeed answered. But as we go along, if you do have any pressing questions, feel free to drop those into the Ask Questions area, and we will return to those as best we can at the end. I think that's all of the stuff that I had to cover at the beginning. So I guess before we begin, there is another quite important introduction to make, and that is to introduce Exclaimer. So who is Exclaimer? Well, at a basic level, we're an SME that is predominantly based in the UK, although we do have global offices around the world too. We've won numerous awards, and we've been a Microsoft partner since 2007. I mean, all of this, of course, you yourself could go and find on the website. So what I prefer to do is to tell our story really in the context of our customers. So Exclaimer provides solutions that allow for complete email management. And really, our solutions have been so successful in resolving that headache of email signature centralization for all of our customers, that we are now recognized as the market leaders for email. I think that's largely because we've continually pioneered new technology, always in the effort of affording our customers easier means to handle their email signatures. Right now, we can boast over 75 million users worldwide. That's organizations in over 160 countries that all trust Exclaimer as the provider of their email signature management. All of them will be using a solution provided and supported by us to ensure that they achieve consistency of their branding, meet the legal compliance that they need to adhere to, and succeed, of course, with all of the different customer engagement that they are looking to achieve. And that would be on every single email that they are currently sending. And finally, we're celebrating a birthday this year. We've just celebrated our 20th year helping our customers. That's 20 years spent collectively gaining and then sharing expertise in this specific specialism, the email signature. 20 years of our customers benefiting from our advice on best practice, on capitalizing on the untapped potential the email signature may well represent for them. But most of all, it's 20 years which contain immeasurable hours of time that we've saved organizations that otherwise would sink that time into pursuing. My hope is that that provides some context as to why we might be considered an authority on the subject of email signatures. But let's waste no further time on introductions, and instead, I'd like to explore the objective of this session. It is my hope that today we can explore why organizations really even see value in centrally managing their email signatures. Why do we go chasing this end goal? We'll also discuss how organizations might then traditionally achieve that standardization, the typically accepted means of doing this outside of using a solution such as our own. Now, some of these might very well be suitable for you. And I don't mean today to suggest that Exclaimer is by any means the only way of achieving centralization. Certainly, though, I think for a lot of organizations, it does represent a very strong way of doing that, of achieving that centralization that can be so very important. And for that reason, I'm also going to be showing some common issues in managing signatures without a third-party solution, such as Exclaimer. And that will then lead into exactly what our product is, Exclaimer Cloud, and why that might be a better means to reach a standardization. And that will, of course, include a demonstration of how that solution works and the ease of using it day to day. What then that breaks down to is an agenda that looks like this, that we'll cover the value of centralization, achieving that centralization, and those common obstacles before we turn our attention to Exclaimer Cloud. I'll introduce what that product really enables, look at a case study, success story of a customer I've had the pleasure of working with who uses Exclaimer Cloud, and then look at how that solution. Or finally, returning to any questions anyone may have. So let's begin by looking at exactly why customers of ours, and as well just people that we've encountered, do go looking for email centralization, the standardization of email. Well, here really are 4 key outcomes we've been able to establish. I'd like to take a look at these because I think this really gets to the heart of why an organization goes seeking email signature centralization. One of the top reasons we identified is just brand consistency in general, the uniformity of how a company is presented in their email signature. That the same logo, the same font and colors and titles are always displayed in the ways that the company wishes, that it's meeting the branding that they have set elsewhere in uh, all representation of that company. And that should be the case. That conformity should be realized across all devices and all email clients. That is the only way that the organization can build trust and brand integrity into those emails that they send, and ultimately drive the engagement that their recipients have with their brand. But as well, just as important, we've discovered, is employee efficiency. That centralized email signatures can be a tall task to realize. Certainly, if you're trying to do this separate to some means that you're expecting end users to kind of adhere to these goals themselves, it can be very difficult to realize, and it can take quite a lot of time. By removing the end user as much as possible from the process, by trying to allow this to be a task controlled by IT admins, you can remove a lot of the headache, saving time, increasing productivity, and allowing the IT or marketing teams to focus on more pressing tasks. Now, what maybe doesn't represent so much a risk as these other two might, but more opportunity, is the promotional and marketing content that centralization might unlock. If you can move the core business metrics forward through content in the signature, it unlocks the value of the signature. What we'll be looking at in just a moment is just what kind of content we might add to the signature to make it its most effective. Truly, the signature is a great tool because it can be so targeted. We know our recipient as we send that email. So if our email signature has content very specifically targeted towards them at that exact time, it's a timely signature as well, keeping in mind maybe marketing activity we have going on elsewhere, promotional campaigns we have going on, we can really drive the effectiveness of that signature and where it's really leading up. And finally, but no less important, is regulatory compliance, ensuring that we're adhering to email law, that we've got an appropriate disclaimer, confidentiality notices, and of course, we are making sure that legal governance is being strictly adhered to, where we're reducing any risk of legal ramifications. So I mentioned their promotional opportunities, and this is something we are big proponents of here at Exclaimer. So much so, we've gone ahead and constructed a little guide to the email signature we like to call Email Signatures for Dummies. And this is really our definitive guide in our 20 years of experience of what the email signature can be tooled to accomplish. In this Email Signatures for Dummies guide, we give an overview of what we've defined as being the 7 C's of signature design. And that framework allows organizations to quickly and easily create effective email signatures. Now, that's something I can provide a copy of if anyone's got any interest in viewing that that booklet. But inside, we kind of try to suggest how you can tool the signature to not only enforce brand compliance, but extend social media reach and gain customer feedback, as well as really driving those marketing activities as well. Just here is a little taste of those 7 C's. And right here, you can see in place in an example email signature, those 7 components that we have defined them. But we're not just talking about contact details, we're also looking to include any qualifications that might lend credence to the individual or the organization, as well the branding, the marketing information, maybe collecting feedbacks, CSAT, or maybe uh, a net promoter score being captured in our email signature, well as our social media channels, driving engagement to those channels where we're connecting to our customers and clients, and as well, of course, our legal disclaimer where we're making sure to comply to email law. I guess, really, in summary, centralization is crucial because it's within centralization that we realize the true nature of an email signature and its true potential. So how do we go about that? How do we achieve that centralization? Well, commonly, what we've encountered is three methods that companies try and achieve centralization. And that's these three here. These are what, outside of a third-party solution, companies end up doing. Some very clever and very entrepreneurial companies might try and do something very bespoke. They'll build something that they utilize themselves, and they might find that to be very successful. But most companies are going to do one of these three things. A common method we do still see today is that IT is relied upon to visit every single device that every person uses to ensure the signature is placed on that email client on that device. And I guess whilst this is very tedious, it is certainly potentially feasible if there are a small handful of users and an expectation that those signatures will remain static for a very long time. Now, as I've mentioned, timeliness can be very crucial here. If your signature doesn't adapt to the ongoing developments that you'll see within your organization, it can very swiftly fall flat. If it's a dynamic signature that you're updating regularly, it becomes a bulletin, it becomes something that's drawing interest, driving traffic. So if you're going to explore perhaps that untapped potential I've suggested, then I would dissuade you from managing in this particular method. It could end up representing a lot of work on your part, especially if those changes become routine. It's also true that this procedure is likely going to retain you as the principal owner of this process. And actually, when we look at the efficiency of email signature management, I'd like to propose that the best way of being efficient with signature management is to get involved stakeholders that are earlier going to be part of the process traditionally. These are typically people in marketing, people in branding. Now, of course, we can't expect those types of users to go around, design signatures, and put that onto desks. As a third-party solution we'll come to later, maybe we can get them involved in more process. Ultimately, then, the IT visiting every desk solution ultimately likely just represents yet another chore that the IT professional will just end up actively avoiding in favor of more pressing tasks, those tasks that they are certain just require their attention as a priority. Now, alternatively, you could try the second. You could ask users to recreate signature designs themselves, avoiding having to go desk by desk. From our findings over the years, this is certainly the most common method we've seen. Now, the idea here is everyone will copy and paste a company-approved template into their respective emails, and this, in theory, avoids that extensive IT labor and feasibly stops the chaos of DIY design still, that we're still centralizing those signatures. And certainly, I would suggest if you've got a population that's entirely IT proficient, that users are users you can trust fully follow your instructions, this could be eminently achievable, especially if you remain hot on enforcing any changes as they may be required. Unfortunately, though, this is, in our experience, rarely the case. You're going to find conformity is often never truly attained uh, whenever the application is left to a large. Users are going to make changes, sometimes in error, sometimes due to complacency, but also you might also find that individuals just go rogue and deliberately tamper with the signature design in favor of their style. Uh, Now, if you have the time and you know how, you can create a signature template using custom HTML. And then if you set it up correctly in uh, Exchange Online, you can automatically append this email signature to all messages via console. And that gives you a lot more control. You're handling things at server level, which means you're pretty much able to ensure a consistent HTML signature. And that really gives little room for user error or tampering. And as well, you'll likely instantly see this across most devices, which of course sounds great. It's going to meet a lot of what we've kind of identified as being the outcome. But there are still limitations. There are still obstacles to overcome. For a start, HTML itself, of course, is a language that requires prior knowledge. If we return back to the idea of stakeholders in this process, we're now limited to only people that know how. They also need to have access to Exchange Online to go there and make the edits that are necessary. So again, likely to be sending up to you. Then you have to deal with the native issue of fine. It's kind of known that that disclaimer function of using fonts is really never designed by quality. As far as Microsoft is concerned, the functions really typically plain text. So when you start to find great HTML designs, you can find design errors, bugs, tweaks. Certainly, pulling in Active Directory information can be very troublesome. There are some bugbears. As well, any signature is going to end up at the bottom of any message body, which means when the recipient replies to one of your emails, or your signature is not going to appear under your most recent message when you reply back to them. Instead, it's going to appear at the bottom of the inbox. So, in summary, some of the common obstacles that we see really rely on where we're trying to apply that signature. Is that going to be happening at the server level in the transport rules, or are we going to be doing it in the email client itself? And that's what that sent instructions column represents there. You can see in this table that in that transport rules, there are a number of little bugbears. Things like only being able to embed, host HTML images. You can't embed them. You have to go to your website, your web server, put the image there, and just link to them, which can cause them unwanted behavior in the Outlook client where users have to download images before they'll see them. And as well, there's that issue with signatures not being under the most recent reply as well. What none of the methods we've discussed there do is get the IT person from out of this task. If we don't come up with a way of an easy experience, not only are we potentially causing us to spend more time on this task, we're also not able to delegate it to those marketing, branding. Just again, I'd like to return just briefly to this slide here. Just remind you that if you'd like to, you can scan this QR code here and enter this week's prize draw. What then I'd like to suggest is that Exclaimer Cloud, for a lot of organizations out there, represents the best way of achieving the email signature centralization I've been discussing. Because Exclaimer Cloud resolves all of those issues, but also opens up all of those opportunities. So when we're discussing conformity, well, we know that doing things at the client level doesn't necessarily guarantee conformity. And when we've got to get end users involved, we can't necessarily realize that conformity when there might be errors. That's not the case with Exclaimer Cloud. We can guarantee that conformity, guarantee it. But we're also making sure when we do that, updating signatures is an uncomplicated process, and that time spent can be maintained at a minimum. But ultimately, as well, we're making sure in that conformity that no email is never, ever available to be non-compliant. Always protected. But there's still those opportunities we can realize. We can still look at getting non-IT individuals engaged in managing signatures and doing so early in that process all the way through. Opening up all of those opportunities in signature design, bringing that content into the signature, but as well keeping it up to date as often as we would like, ensuring those signatures. And perhaps we can look at other quite useful elements too, like scheduling signatures or bringing in some analytics. And I said at the beginning, I'd like to look at a success story that I myself have been privy to. And that really draws our attention to the Movember Foundation, who are customers of the Exclaimer Cloud solution. Now, the Movember Foundation came to us with a problem. They had tried to manage their email signatures for Office 365 using transport, and they were having a real rough time of it. They had tried to create signatures for different departments, and that had led to a number of rules that all had to be maintained whenever a change was made. And of course, then they encountered the HTML code and having to make small changes to the code. It was a real challenge for them to keep those signatures up to date in the ways that they wanted. And of course, being a charity, they had numerous events, promotions, campaigns they were always trying to promote alongside their brand. In fact, they complained that it was too difficult to ensure each office location had that consistent signature template that accurately reflected the material they wanted. So they were at the cusp of abandoning using transport rules. But when they were looking at alternatives, all they could see were means by which users suddenly start to do whatever they wanted. They would lose that centralization. So why did they come to us? Well, they wanted something that was very easy. They wanted something where they felt supported, and they wanted to buy from somebody who had the experience to support their aims, their goals, those objectives of making sure their signatures were really, truly effective. So we suggested they start up a trial. We would support them through that trial. We offer all of our customers, prospective customers, a trial. So they went, opened up that trial, and then began testing. And once they started testing, they could immediately see that this was representative of what they were after. They had no issues setting up because we helped them the whole way through that. We got the service running really quickly, which is quite routine for our customers. And by the end of that trial, they could see that it was working exactly the ways that they wanted to, and that it was exactly as easy to use as they hoped. And that's really symptomatic of a lot of what our customers find valuable within us. So then I'd like to talk very briefly about how the solution works, just to summarize. So Exclaimer Cloud deploys signatures in very specific ways, but it all starts with retrieving user details from the Azure Active Directory. So we use Graph API to access user attributes. And basically that API means that we can do this in a very secure way. We can put in an enterprise application in the Azure Active Directory on the tenant of the user. And with that permission established through the enterprise application, we'll be periodically synchronizing the user details into their subscription. And when signatures are ready to deploy, we'll do that using one of two deployment methods. We call client side or what we call server side. Now, client side is more representative of the traditional end user experience, with signatures simply being delivered to the Outlook client. That way, on Windows or on Mac, the agent being installed means the user will receive automatically the email signatures that are assigned to them. And in the local Outlook client on those devices, they'll be able to actually then apply that signature as they compose. They'll see it, they'll be able to control it in all the ways they traditionally would. Now, on the flip side, of course, then we have the server-side process, server-level integration. This is far stronger and achieves a conformity in a wider scope, but does have the drawback of meaning users cannot see the signature as they compose. So server-side, this is an integration with the mail route. Signatures will be applied after the email is sent. So we can use any device to compose and send that email without the signature present. The email reaches Office 365 and is sent to the Exclaimer Cloud service via a send connector. The send connector being triggered off the transport rule. So we've got full control over when that takes place. With the signature applied, the email returns then back to Office. And when we're applying the email signature in our Azure hosted service, we're keeping in mind the reply separators to make sure the signature is applied in the correct spot in our email, underneath the most recent. That way, email can have that signature correctly applied, go back to Office 365, and in the second pass, be delivered to the recipient by the tenancy customer. Now, what's very popular is use of both of these methods, achieving a sort of best of both situation, where the signature is only applied at that server level if it's not already applied at the client level. We're hosted worldwide, and that includes Australia, where we have 2 data centers in an active setup, a high availability cluster, thus meaning we can provide a 99.9% uptime guarantee, whilst also providing the guarantee that data never leaves that region. We're a secure service utilizing quite industry standard ways of encrypting traffic, and that's of course happening both at rest and in transit. And as well, we are a very private solution to use as well. We've got some very, very prolific governmental bodies, healthcare providers, and legal firms that trust in our solution. And that's mainly because we've given them assuredness that data is protected when they use it. We are ISO certified, no confidential data permanently stored, and that includes emails being purged from our disk the moment that those are returned to the customer. So what I thought I'd do is I would just very briefly boot up our portal and sign in, and just give you a small taste of what our interface looks like. All built to be very intuitive. It is all web-based. You can access it anywhere in the world. You can have as many individuals in the organization with access to the portal as we need. And if I launch into the subscription, we will see that I've got a whole area to host my signatures within. I've got different folders representing different departments. And if I go into one of these folders, I'll see all of my different signature designs. You can see I've set up signatures for a whole host of scenarios here with different rules that I can apply, segmenting, perhaps not only by department, but by job title, by different AD groups. I can set signatures to apply to any internal versus external recipients, maybe even do some account-based marketing with signatures specifically targeted audiences I have in mind. And the signature design process is all entirely drag and drop. So if I go into my signature editor tool, I'll see signature design here that I can fully customize just by dragging elements in and out. So here I haven't got a banner. So all I would need to do to add one is drag this placeholder out, leaving that space open. On the left-hand side here, in all of these components I have on the left, I could drag in a new banner to upload that into my design. And changes really can be that simple. And that's for anything we look to add or remove or move around. And then all the granular detail still exists. I can still change the font of the text and the size of the images and the colors used and the spacing, the borders and padding that I'm utilizing. And any link that I want to utilize in any area of the signature, text, images, icon, I can put in, and I can include in that link any UTM parameters that are going to tie into my analytics. So I can really track the effectiveness of stuff. I'll save the signature, store it within my online library, and it will really then just be a case once I know who that signature is being assigned to. Of course, if I am going to be more specific about how long that's going to apply for and elements like that, I will customize that too. But ultimately, I will enable the signature and enable it for either client side, server side. So it is an incredibly intuitive user interface. What I will end on here is that I hope today you've taken something away. You've taken some thought about how you're currently handling your email signatures. Perhaps you're not at the stage where a centralized email signature solution that is third party makes sense. But I'd say certainly you are likely to be at a stage where you could improve that email. Maybe make a change to how you handle it, you manage it. Maybe just make a change about the content you're including in it. Make the most of it. That's a targeted marketing channel that you're potentially leaving to waste. If you are interested in discussing with Exclaimer how we might help you achieve your signature goals, do contact us. We offer a 14-day trial, and you can always request a demonstration if you are just curious. If, however, I've done a fantastic job today at really convincing you this is a great way forward, we can provide a quote. I can arrange for that. And if you're interested in hearing just how much this might cost, we can begin that discussion. What I'm going to do now is open up to any questions that might have been raised. So please feel free to ask any questions if you've been holding them. So now I'm going to stick around just in case anybody has any questions or anybody would like to discuss anything in. Emma, I've just seen your question about migration from Exclaimer on-premise. That is, by and large, a very well-oiled process at this stage. Exclaimer Cloud's been on the market for 5 years now, and we've got better and better over time assisting our existing customers in that migration. I would greatly suggest that if you've got any interest in discussing that as a project, that we might do so perhaps privately at some stage. We can set up a session, discuss what your needs might really be, and in doing so, maybe identify the best path to migration for you. If you can leave your contact details or reach out to me at james.wayne@exclaimer.com, then we can get in touch and discuss that project.